I found my grandfather lying on the marble floor of his study, blood pooling beneath his silver hair. His 70-year-old body was crumpled against the mahogany desk, one hand clutching his chest, the other reaching toward the open safe behind his leather chair. The security cameras had been disabled. The second hard drive he kept hidden was gone, and when his eyes found mine struggling to focus through the pain, he whispered words that would change everything. "They took it, Avery. The Zeus file. Stop the deal before Thanksgiving dinner." If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength when family becomes your enemy. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Your support means everything, and it helps others find these stories when they need them most. But let me take you back to where this nightmare really began, 48 hours before that Thanksgiving dinner that would tear our family apart forever. I had always been the good granddaughter. The one who showed up to every family dinner, who listened to Grandpa Art's business advice, who studied finance at Columbia because he said the Vance empire needed smart blood, not just old money. At 26, I was the youngest executive at Vance Corporation, working 16-hour days to prove I deserved my position, not just inherited it. My mother, Vivian, was the CEO, elegant and sharp in her tailored suits, always reminding me that image was everything in our world. My father, Grant, was the CFO, charming at cocktail parties, quick with a joke and a firm handshake that made investors feel confident. We were the perfect American dynasty on the outside, but I had started noticing the cracks 6 months earlier. It began with small things. Grant taking calls in other rooms, his voice dropping to urgent whispers when I passed by. Vivian suddenly interested in the details of Grandpa Art's private accounts, asking me seemingly casual questions about his investment strategies. Documents appearing on my desk that I never remembered, requesting authorization forms for subsidiary sales that felt rushed. I ignored my instincts because they were my parents, because family meant trust, because I had been taught that Vances protected Vances no matter what. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I stayed late at the office finishing quarterly reports. The building was empty, just security guards making their rounds and the hum of servers in the basement. I needed a file from my mother's office, something about the Zeus transaction that Grandpa Art had mentioned during our last meeting. He had seemed worried about it, which was unusual for a man who had built a billion-dollar empire from nothing and never showed fear. I used my executive keycard to enter her office. The door clicked open, and I stepped into the dark space, reaching for the light switch. That is when I saw the glow of her computer screen, still active, casting blue shadows across her desk. She must have left in a hurry. I should have walked away. I should have respected her privacy. But something made me look at the screen, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Email chains between my mother and father. Conversations with offshore account managers. Communications with a private investigator who had been following Grandpa Art for months, documenting his routines, his security protocols, his private meetings with his lawyer, Eli Reed. And there, in a message dated just 3 days ago, my mother had written something that made my hands shake. "The old man is getting suspicious. We need to move the Zeus deal forward. Once we have the $500 million from the subsidiary sale, we can pay off Grant's debts and disappear before Art realizes the signatures were forged. He trusts Avery completely. Use that." I stood there in the darkness, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. My parents were planning to steal from my grandfather, to forge his signature and sell off a crucial part of Vance Corporation to cover my father's gambling debts, debts I had never known existed. And they were planning to use me as their unwitting cover, my reputation for honesty and my close relationship with Art serving as the perfect smokescreen. I printed everything. Every email, every document, every communication. I loaded it all onto a flash drive and erased the print logs. Then I left her office exactly as I had found it, my mind racing through possibilities and probabilities, trying to figure out what to do next. I could not go to my parents. I could not confront them without proof and a plan. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went to see my grandfather. It was past midnight when I arrived at his Fifth Avenue mansion, the one he had bought when he made his first million, and refused to leave even when his wealth grew exponentially. The doorman recognized me and waved me through without question. I found Art in his study, still awake, reading contracts by the light of his antique desk lamp. He looked up when I entered, his sharp blue eyes taking in my disheveled appearance, my tear-streaked face, the flash drive clutched in my shaking hand. "Avery," he said quietly. "What happened?" I could not speak at first. The words caught in my throat, tangled with the pain of betrayal and the awful realization that my parents, the people who had raised me, were criminals. Finally, I managed to whisper, "Grandpa, I need to show you something. And after you see it, nothing will ever be the same." We spent 3 hours going through the evidence. Art's face remained impassive, but I could see the muscle ticking in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the armrests of his chair, the flash of something dangerous in his eyes. When we finished, he sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the wall of family photographs. Pictures of my mother as a little girl sitting on his lap, my parents' wedding day, my graduation from Columbia. I knew Grant had problems, he finally said, his voice rough. The gambling, the debts. I paid them off twice before warned him it was the last time, but I never thought Vivian would go this far. My own daughter. He looked at me then, and I saw something I had never seen in my grandfather's face before. Vulnerability. She was going to destroy everything I built, everything I wanted to leave for you. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Art stood up, walking to the window that overlooked Central Park, the city lights glittering like diamonds in the darkness. "We stop them. But we do it smart. We do it clean. And we do it in a way that ensures they can never hurt this family again." He turned back to me, and the vulnerability was gone, replaced by the steel that had made him a legend in the business world. "Can I trust you, Avery? Can I trust you to help me save this company, even if it means destroying your relationship with your parents forever?" I thought about all the lies, all the manipulation, the way they had planned to use me as their pawn. I thought about the empire my grandfather had built, with his bare hands, the legacy he wanted to leave the employees, whose livelihoods depended on Vance Corporation's survival. And I thought about the kind of person I wanted to be. Someone who stood up for what was right, even when it cost everything. "Yes," I said, "I'm with you." The next 48 hours were a blur of secret meetings and careful planning. Grandpa Art contacted Eli Reed, his lawyer of 30 years, a man whose loyalty was absolute and whose discretion was legendary. Together, we built our case. Eli filed a temporary restraining order that would not be executed until Thanksgiving Day, ensuring the money transfer could not happen. He prepared criminal fraud charges that would be delivered to the FBI the moment we gave the signal. Art transferred legal control of his personal trusts to me, protecting his assets from any claims my parents might make. We knew they would try something before Thanksgiving dinner. Art had let slip to my mother that he was having chest pains, that he was worried about his health. It was bait, and they took it. Because desperate people make mistakes, and we were counting on that desperation. That is when I found him on the study floor, exactly as we had anticipated, though the violence of it still shocked me. They had not just drugged him as we had expected. Grant had actually attacked him, trying to force him to reveal where he kept his backup documentation. The second hard drive they stole contained fake information, a carefully constructed set of files that would implicate them further. But Art had been hurt in the struggle, his head striking the corner of the desk, blood matting his white hair. I called his private doctor, someone we trusted completely. No hospitals where questions would be asked and reports filed before we were ready. As the doctor tended to my grandfather's wounds, Art gripped my hand with surprising strength. "It is time," he said. "Tomorrow at dinner we end this." Thanksgiving Day arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp and clear, the kind of day that made Manhattan look like something from a postcard. The mansion was decorated with understated elegance, gold and cream arrangements of chrysanthemums and wheat, the long dining table set with antique china and crystal glasses that caught the light from the chandeliers. My mother had insisted on inviting everyone important. Board members from Vance Corporation, the CEO of the company trying to buy our subsidiary, major shareholders. She wanted an audience for the family's unity, never knowing she was setting the stage for her own downfall. I arrived early to help with preparations, playing my role perfectly. Vivian was in her element, directing the catering staff, checking every detail with obsessive precision. She wore a burgundy dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, her blonde hair swept up in an elegant chignon diamonds, glinting at her throat and wrists. When she saw me, she smiled with what looked like genuine warmth. "Avery, darling, you look lovely. Is that the dress I sent you?" She had sent it 2 weeks ago, a designer piece in deep green that complemented my dark hair and pale skin. At the time, I had thought it was a sweet gesture. Now I understood it was part of the performance, making sure I looked the part of the successful Vance heiress. "Thanks, Mom," I said, my throat tight with the effort of maintaining my composure. "Is Grandpa coming down soon? I haven't seen him since Tuesday." "Oh, you know your grandfather. He has been resting. All this stress with the Zeus deal has him exhausted. But he will be here for dinner." She touched my arm, her hand cold even through the fabric of my dress. "I'm so glad we are all together for this. Family is everything, isn't it?" I wanted to scream at the hypocrisy at the casual way she lied while planning to rob the old man who had given her everything. Instead, I nodded and excused myself, escaping to the bathroom where I could breathe without the weight of her deception crushing my chest. Grant arrived shortly after, loud and jovial, shaking hands with the arriving guests like he was running for office. He had that particular brightness in his eyes that I now recognized as the manic energy of someone riding the edge of disaster, believing they were about to pull off the impossible. When he saw me, he pulled me into a hug that felt suffocating. "There is my brilliant daughter," he boomed, his breath smelling of whiskey even though it was barely 5 in the afternoon. "Youngest executive in Vance Corporation history. Your mother and I are so proud." I pulled away, unable to bear his touch. "Thanks, Dad. Have you seen Grandpa Art?" Something flickered across his face, too quick for most people to catch. Guilt maybe, or fear. "Not yet, but I am sure the old man will make his grand entrance. He always does." The dining room filled with guests, the murmur of conversation and clinking of glasses, creating a soundtrack of normalcy that felt surreal. I found my seat between Eli Reed and one of the board members, a position that had been carefully arranged. Eli gave me a subtle nod, his weathered face calm and professional. Everything was in place. We were ready. At exactly 6 o'clock, my grandfather entered the room and I had to admire his showmanship. He moved slowly, leaning on his cane more than usual, the bandage on his head covered by carefully styled hair but still visible if you knew to look for it. He had darkened the bruising with makeup, making it look even worse than it was. He looked fragile and wounded, exactly the image we needed to project. My mother rushed to his side immediately, all false concern and tender touches. "Dad, you should have stayed in bed. You are not well enough for this." "Nonsense," Art said, his voice carrying across the room with the authority that had commanded boardrooms for 50 years. "I would not miss Thanksgiving with my family for anything. Besides, we have much to celebrate tonight." He let her help him to his seat at the head of the table, his eyes finding mine across the expanse of white linen and flickering candles. There was steel in that gaze and promise of justice. Dinner proceeded with agonizing slowness. Course after course of culinary perfection that turned to ash in my mouth. I watched my parents perform, my mother playing the devoted daughter, my father charming the guests with stories and jokes. The CEO from the purchasing company kept glancing at his watch, clearly anxious about the deal that was supposed to close after dinner. He had no idea he was about to be part of something much more dramatic than a business transaction. Finally, as dessert was being cleared away, Art tapped his wine glass with his fork, the crystal chime cutting through the conversation. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. He stood slowly, steady on his feet despite the weakness he had been projecting. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice warm and gracious. "Thanksgiving has always been about family, about gratitude, about recognizing what truly matters in our lives." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the table, lingering on my mother and father. "It is also about honesty, about facing uncomfortable truths, and tonight I have some truths to share." I saw my mother's face go pale, her hand clutching the edge of the table. Grant's smile froze, becoming a grotesque mask. They knew something was wrong, but they could not figure out what, could not see the trap closing around them. "First, I want to introduce someone who will be joining the Vance Corporation Board of Directors effective immediately." Art gestured toward me and I stood on shaking legs. "My granddaughter Avery has proven herself not just as a talented executive, but as someone with the integrity and courage that this company needs. She has uncovered something that threatened to destroy everything we have built, and she had the strength to bring it to my attention even though it meant exposing people she loves." The room erupted in polite applause, confused but following social protocol. I could feel my mother's eyes boring into me, could see the dawning realization on her face. Grant had gone red, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "Which brings me to my second announcement," Art continued, his tone hardening. "It has come to my attention that certain individuals have been engaged in criminal fraud, specifically the forging of my signature on documents related to the sale of Vance subsidiary holdings to Titan Acquisitions." He turned to look directly at the CEO from Titan, who had gone very still. "Mr. Morrison, I believe you are here tonight under the impression that we would be finalizing a $500 million transaction. I regret to inform you that no such transaction was ever authorized by me, and any documents bearing my signature are forgeries." The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Morrison stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "Arthur, what is the meaning of this? We have contracts, signed documents, months of negotiations. Negotiations conducted by people who had no authority to sell my company's assets," Art replied calmly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a black envelope, but he did not hand it to my mother. Instead, he walked around the table and placed it directly in front of Mr. Morrison. This contains a sworn affidavit, with forensic evidence proving the signatures were forged, along with a temporary restraining order, preventing any money transfer and formal notification that federal fraud charges have been filed with the FBI. I suggest you contact your legal team immediately. The room exploded. Mr. Morrison ripping open the envelope, his face going from red to white as he read. Board members jumping to their feet, voices rising in shock and confusion. And my father Grant standing so violently that his chair toppled backward, the crash of wood on marble cutting through the chaos. "You sanctimonious bastard," Grant snarled, all pretense of charm evaporating. "You think you can do this to us? We are your family." "You stopped being my family when you forged my signature to steal $500 million, Art replied, his voice like ice. "When you attacked me in my own home, trying to force me to reveal where I kept my backup documentation. When you drugged me and left me to die on the floor of my study." "That is a lie," my mother shrieked, finally finding her voice. She was on her feet now too, her elegant facade cracking to reveal something ugly underneath. "You cannot prove any of that." "Actually, we can," Eli Reed said, standing to join Art. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen, and suddenly my grandfather's voice filled the room rough with pain. "Why are you doing this, Grant? I am your father-in-law. I gave you everything." And then Grant's voice, thick with rage and desperation. "You gave me nothing but judgment and loans I had to beg for. This money is mine, Vivian's. We deserve it for putting up with your arrogance all these years." The sound of violence, a thud, Art's grunt of pain, and then my mother's voice cold and calculating. "Hit him again. He is hiding something. Check the safe." The recording ended, and the silence that followed was absolute. Every person in that room had heard proof of attempted murder, of fraud, of conspiracy. My mother stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Grant's face had gone purple, veins standing out on his forehead, his hands shaking with fury. "You recorded us," my mother whispered, and there was something close to respect in her horror. "You planned this whole thing." "No," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. I stood and walked to stand beside my grandfather, every eye in the room following me. "You planned this. You planned to steal from him, to destroy the company, to use me as your cover. Grandpa Art just made sure you would face consequences for your crimes." Grant turned on me then, his face contorted with rage. "You little bitch. You betrayed your own parents." I saved my family, I shot back, surprised by the strength in my own voice. My real family. The man who built this company with honor, who treated his employees like human beings, who earned his legacy, instead of trying to steal someone else's. "You are not my family anymore. You are criminals." He moved, then lurching around the table toward me, and for a moment I thought he was going to hit me right there in front of everyone. But I did not flinch. I stood my ground, and when he was close enough that I could smell the whiskey and desperation on his breath, I pulled out my phone and pressed play on another recording. His own voice filled the room again from earlier that evening when he had cornered me in the hallway not knowing I was recording. "You better keep your mouth shut, Avery. You are just like your grandfather, think you are better than everyone else. But you are nothing. A spoiled little girl playing at business. If you get in our way, you will regret it." "That sounds like a threat to me," Eli Reed said calmly. He gestured, and suddenly security guards were entering the room, professional and efficient. "Grant Thorne, Vivian Thorne, I am authorized to inform you that you are under investigation for fraud, forgery, assault, and conspiracy. These gentlemen will be escorting you from the premises. Your access to all Vance Corporation accounts and properties has been revoked, and you have been removed from all positions within the company, effective immediately." My father lunged at me then, really lunged, his hands reaching for my throat. But he never reached me. 2 security guards caught him, wrestling him backward as he fought and screamed obscenities. My mother did not fight. She just stood there staring at me with such hatred that I felt it like a physical blow. "You will never be half the woman I am," she hissed. "You think you have won. You are nothing without me, nothing without this family name. Arthur is using you just like he used me, and when you are no longer useful, he will throw you away too. The difference is," I said quietly, "I earned my place here. You tried to steal yours." They dragged my father away, his shouts echoing through the mansion until the front door slammed shut, cutting off his voice. My mother walked out on her own, her back straight, her head high, even in defeat. She did not look back. The remaining guests left quickly after that, shocked and disturbed, no doubt already on their phones to their lawyers and publicists. Mr. Morrison from Titan Acquisitions left with a terse apology to my grandfather, clearly furious at being caught up in the mess. Within an hour, the mansion was empty, except for Art, Eli, and me. I sat down heavily in one of the dining room chairs, suddenly exhausted, all the adrenaline draining out of me. I had just destroyed my relationship with my parents forever. I had exposed them as criminals in front of the most powerful people in New York's business community. And I had done it on Thanksgiving, a day that was supposed to be about family and gratitude and coming together. "Avery," my grandfather said, softly sitting down beside me. His hand found mine warm and steady. "Are you all right?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to be strong and confident and sure of what we had done. But the truth came out instead, raw and painful. I just sent my parents to prison. "No," Art said firmly. "They sent themselves there the moment they chose greed over integrity. You just made sure they faced justice instead of succeeding in their theft. There is a difference." "She is my mother," I whispered, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "How do I live with this?" "By remembering why you did it," Eli Reed said, his voice gentle. "By knowing that you saved this company, saved hundreds of jobs, saved your grandfather's legacy. That took courage most people never have to show." Art squeezed my hand. "I am not giving you an easy life, Avery. I am giving you a fight. The board will question your age, your experience. There will be people who think you only got this position because of family connections. You will have to prove yourself every single day. But I know you can do it. You just proved it tonight." "What happens now?" I asked, wiping at my tears with my free hand. "Now we rebuild," Art said. "Tomorrow we will hold a press conference. We will control the narrative before the media circus starts. We will be honest about what happened, about the fraud attempt, about the internal investigation that uncovered it. We will show the business world that Vance Corporation has integrity, that we police our own, that we do not tolerate corruption even from family." He paused, looking at me intently. "And we will announce that you are not just joining the board. You are becoming Chief Executive Officer of Vance Corporation." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "I am 26 years old. And you are brilliant, hardworking, and you just proved you will do whatever it takes to protect this company. Those are the qualities I need in a CEO. Not age, not experience, character." He smiled, and there was something fierce and proud in his expression. "You did not inherit money tonight, Avery. You inherited a war. And you have already proven you can win." The next morning, we held the press conference. It was brutal. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, my face broadcast on every major news network as I stood beside my grandfather and explained what had happened. We released carefully edited portions of the recordings, enough to prove the fraud without violating any ongoing criminal investigations. We presented the forensic evidence. We answered every question with the kind of transparency that was rare in corporate scandals. The media reaction was explosive. Some praised us for our integrity, for refusing to protect family members who had committed crimes. Others accused us of ruthlessness, of destroying a mother and daughter relationship for money and power. There were think pieces about family loyalty versus corporate responsibility, debates about whether I was a hero or a villain, speculation about my parents' legal defenses and potential prison time. Through it all, I stood firm. I gave interviews where I explained that integrity matters more than family connections, that companies have a responsibility to their employees and shareholders that supersedes personal relationships. I was honest about how much it hurt, about the pain of betrayal, but I never apologized for doing what was right. Grant and Vivian were arrested 2 days after Thanksgiving. Federal fraud charges, attempted theft, assault. Vivian got the better lawyer and managed to negotiate a plea deal, 5 years in a minimum security facility, in exchange for testifying against Grant and returning what was left of the money they had stolen. Grant went to trial, lost spectacularly when the jury heard the recordings, and got 15 years. I did not go to either of their sentencings. Eli sent me updates, and I read them alone in my new office at Vance Corporation, the one that used to be my mother's. I cried for what we could have been, for the family I had thought I had. But I did not regret my choices. The first year as CEO was harder than anything I had ever done. I was under constant scrutiny, every decision questioned, every mistake magnified. There were board members who tried to undermine me, competitors who saw my youth as weakness, business partners who tested my resolve. I worked 18-hour days, learned everything I could about every aspect of the business, made changes that were necessary but unpopular. But I also succeeded. I renegotiated contracts that saved the company millions. I invested in new technologies that positioned us ahead of our competition. I created a company culture based on transparency and merit, where employees were promoted based on performance, not politics. And slowly, grudgingly, the business world began to take me seriously. Art stepped back gradually, letting me lead while remaining available for advice. We had dinner every Sunday, just the two of us, and he would tell me stories about building the company, about the mistakes he had made, the lessons he had learned. He was proud of me, I could see it in his eyes, and that pride meant more than any corporate success. One year after that disastrous Thanksgiving dinner, we held another one. Smaller this time, just Art, Eli, and a few executives who had become genuine friends. We ate and laughed and told stories, and it felt like family in a way that the old Thanksgiving dinners never had. These were people who respected me, who earned their place at the table, who chose to be there rather than showing up out of obligation or greed. The doorbell rang just as we were finishing dessert. I answered it to find a courier with a letter, my name written in familiar handwriting. Vivian's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it, my heart pounding with a confused mix of hope and dread. It was not an apology. It was a warning, a promise of revenge, a bitter screed about how I had destroyed her life and she would never forgive me. It detailed every way she thought I was unworthy of my position, every mistake I had made as CEO, every perceived slight and failure. It ended with a single line that made my blood run cold. You may have won this battle, Avery, but you are still my daughter. And daughters always become their mothers in the end. I read it twice, feeling the old hurt and anger rising up. Then I walked to the fireplace and threw the letter into the flames. I watched it burn, the paper, curling and blackening, Vivian's hateful words disappearing into ash and smoke. When it was gone completely, I felt something inside me let go, some last thread of hope that we could somehow repair what was broken. Art appeared beside me, his hand on my shoulder. What did it say? Nothing that matters, I replied, and I meant it. She is not my family anymore. You are, this company is, the people who choose to be in my life, who respect me, who I can trust. That is my family now. He smiled, and there was profound relief in his expression. Do you know what the real legacy is, Avery? Not the money or the company or the power. It is that you did something I never could. You put ethics above everything else, even when it cost you the most. That is worth more than all the wealth I have ever accumulated. I hugged him, then, this man who had given me everything that truly mattered. Purpose, integrity, the courage to stand up for what was right even when the cost was unbearable. He had not given me an easy inheritance. He had given me something better. The chance to build something real, something clean, something I could be proud of. Now, 2 years later, Vance Corporation is stronger than it has ever been. I am 28 years old, and I am leading one of the most successful companies in America. Not because of my family name, but because I earned it. Every single day I prove myself. Every single day I make decisions based on what is right, not what is easy or profitable. And every single day I become more certain that I made the right choice that Thanksgiving. My mother is still in prison. Grant has another 13 years to serve. They have tried to reach out a few times through lawyers and intermediaries, always asking for money or favors. I have refused every time. Because forgiveness is not the same as foolishness, and I will never let them hurt me or my company again. Some people think I am cold. Some people think I should have found a way to reconcile, to maintain family ties despite everything. But those people did not feel the betrayal, did not hear their parents plotting to destroy their grandfather, did not have to choose between loyalty and integrity. I do not owe anyone an explanation for protecting myself and the people who depend on Vance Corporation. What I learned through all of this is that family is not about blood. It is about respect, about trust, about choosing each other every day. It is about people who lift you up instead of tearing you down, who celebrate your successes instead of resenting them, who stand with you in the hard moments instead of betraying you for money. I built my own family. Art, Eli, my executive team, the employees who work hard and believe in what we are creating. These are my people. This is my legacy. And it is so much better than anything my parents could have given me because it is built on truth instead of lies, on integrity instead of greed. The real inheritance was not wealth. It was the courage to walk away from toxicity even when it wore the mask of family. It was learning that I deserved respect not just as the Vance heiress, but as a person with value and strength. It was understanding that sometimes love means letting go, that sometimes the healthiest choice is to burn the bridges that were built on rot and decay. I am Avery Vance. I am the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. And I got here by refusing to compromise my integrity even when it cost me my parents, my old life, and the comfortable illusion that family means unconditional loyalty. I got here by choosing myself, by believing I deserved better, by standing up even when my legs were shaking and my heart was breaking. That is the real legacy. Not what you inherit, but what you build. Not who you are born to, but who you choose to become. So I ask you this. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what is right? Have you ever looked at the people who were supposed to love you and realized they were destroying you instead? What did you do? How did you find the courage to walk away, or did you stay and try to change things from within? Drop your story in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you believe integrity matters more than blood ties. Like this video if you have ever had to make an impossible choice and live to tell about it. Because these stories matter. Your story matters. And maybe, just maybe, sharing our experiences of betrayal and redemption will help someone else find the strength to choose themselves, to demand better, to build a life based on truth instead of settling for pretty lies. Your legacy is not what you are given. It is what you choose to build from the ashes of what was taken from you. Choose wisely. Choose bravely. Choose yourself.